Hey everyone, and welcome to the Frames for Thought podcast. My name's Alex.
And I'm Mark.
And today we're going to talk to you about breaking into the film industry. We're going to be talking about Mark's journey, from the time he was a student, all the way up to his first casting call, and how his career has changed since then. So sit back and relax, because here we go. Hey Mark.
Hey Alex, how are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you.
That's good. So, let's talk about you and where you are now on that part of your journey.
Great, I'd love to inform everyone.
So maybe we could go over some of your credits.
Yes, absolutely. So for me, the bulk of my credits come from theater. That's where I've spent most of my time. I've done things like Pantos, which I'm pretty happy of. Just like really fun family shows. And then I've done lots of other stuff that's more adult-oriented, like 7 Stories and A Quiet Place are 2 shows that I remember from my past that I'm really fond of. 7 Stories in particular, I was in college at Keanu back in Fort McMurray, and that was the first time I ever had a lead role. And I played the man in 7 Stories by Morris Ponich, and the character is on stage the entire show. He doesn't leave. The setting is the man is on a windowsill and he's about to kill himself. And during the show, the windows open up and he talks to a whole bunch of different characters and then basically realizes he's not going to kill himself. And then he flies. And so it was the first chance I had to really put everything I was out on stage, and I was really proud of that one. So that one really stands out in my head. A Quiet Place is the other one that really stands out, which was a Vancouver show I did for the Vancouver Fringe. And it sort of, for me, emphasizes everything that I love about Fringe. I think Fringe is one of the most important and valuable tools for an actor. It allows you to do things that you might not get to do in the mainstream theater or the mainstream film, because it's a lot of, they take a lot more risks, and a lot of companies, or like not even so much companies, but it's a mixture of companies and just people who want to be directors or people who just want to be writers. And so it's a whole, it's a mirage, not a mirage, a mirad, I can't even think of the word.
Menagerie?
Menagerie, thank you sir. It's a menagerie of people, and it just kind of creates beautiful art for whatever city it's in. So if there's actually something I can recommend to people who want to act or who want to explore what they can do creatively, I would say look to your local Fringe. I think that's going to be one of the most valuable resources you have.
So for those who are maybe not in the know about what a Fringe might be, it's like a theater acting street festival type thing.
Yeah, and it's not just acting as well. You'll have a lot of dance. You'll have poetry at some of them. It's a wide variety of. It's kind of like a variety show that takes over your city for a week.
Okay, and what about for film?
I actually struggled getting into film at first. It was a very long process, but the first gig I got, a big one, it was Arrow. Arrow was the first gig I got where I wasn't background. And then after that, I got Sirens. And then I had a third credit on the go, but then a global something happened. And so it kind of took away that third credit. But I was averaging a gig a year, which is pretty good.
Right on.
Yeah.
So maybe let's take a few steps back and we'll talk about how you got there.
Right.
At what point in your life did you think, yeah, I think I want to be an actor?
Yeah, for me, I was always sort of interested in performance and entertaining people.
From a really young age?
From a very young age. I was about to say, I remember being something like 6 or 7, and I was obsessed with Elvis. I just loved his music. It's a big thing in my family. I just loved Elvis. And I remember this one time my mom had her friends over, or was it just a friend, and I wanted to perform Elvis for them. And so I just put like an Elvis CD in and like mouthed the words to a song and danced. And like that's the earliest memory I have of me performing for people. And just like some silly kid stuff. So I think it was always in there inside of me that I always wanted to perform and entertain.
Did you put on a suit?
No, I wasn't that smart at 6. So that was the first instance of it. And then kind of throughout my childhood doing shows at school, it was always sort of fun, but I didn't think it was a career. I thought it was just something that people do as like a hobby or just something like to do on the weekends for a bit. It wasn't until I got into high school that's when it really kind of solidified for me that this is something not only that I liked to do, but something I wanted to do. That's when you kind of start to really have the really solid drama classes for us. And that's when I kind of laid down like, oh, this is what acting is. This is what performance is. I mean, I still had a long journey ahead of that, but that was just the foundation of it where I thought like, yeah, this is really fun. This is something I want to do. And this is something I want to share with people. That's I'd say that's really where it got solidified for me, was high school.
Do you think that where you grew up played a role in your initial belief that this isn't something that people can do here?
Oh, absolutely. Because where we grew up, there wasn't really an art scene. There was like the local theater where a whole bunch, like they would do 4 shows a year. And so that was that. Then all the high schools had their own drama departments too, and they would put on shows, so there was that. But outside of that, there was really nothing else. Maybe radio, that was about it. That's as far as you could go. Because I remember as a kid, I was thinking I was going to be a cop. And then in high school, on top of drama, the only other class that I enjoyed doing that I was good at was accounting. So it's like in high school I had these two polar opposite possible career choices. Because even at that age, when it's like getting solidified to me that this is what I want to do, there was always that other option, because it was never really said that you could be an actor. I think my mom actually tells stories of when I was really young and I said like I want to be an actor, and she purposely tried to like get me not to be
to change your mind.
Exactly, because it was like she just knew that the life was really hard, that it wasn't an easy life, and she wanted things easier for me. But I mean, I was winning awards in high school for like best supporting actor, so I wasn't really going to forget that this is something I like to do. And so yeah, I just pursued it. When I had the chance, I went for it.
That's awesome. And then throughout high school, as you started to realize, oh, wow, like this is something that I could possibly pursue as a profession, how did your perception of acting change over the course of that time, from the time that you went from high school and made the transition into college? Was there like a sudden realization that you wanted to do musical theater, or did film suddenly open up to you? Was film always the end goal? Or did you think like a professional stage career was coming up, like Broadway or the Tonys, or something like that?
So that's a very loaded question. So I'm just going to go to the very beginning of it.
Sure.
I know for me, and I think this is true with a lot of young actors. So when I first kind of figured out what it was and what I wanted to do, it was something very selfish for me. It wasn't so much about the audience. It was about me and my performance and how I feel. And it was very just selfish. And I think that that's probably like a part of being a high school kid as well. Like it's not just
the fame.
Actor. Exactly. And I wasn't really fame hungry. I knew this is something I liked to do, and I knew I was good at it, and I just wanted to do it, and I just wanted to like feel like I was the best at it. Not so much, I didn't really think about like money and cars and girls, that wasn't really the end goal. It's never been the end goal, really.
I'm not sure that makes you selfish as much as it might make you ambitious.
Maybe. But for me, I felt like it was more of a selfish thing. And I see it in a lot of other actors who are very, they don't really want to give much to their scene partner. They don't really care much for what the audience thinks. It's just about them, their performance, their company, whatever it may be. But as I started to learn the craft more and I got more involved with it, that's when I started to realize that for me, it became less about me and became more about the audience. And I want the audience to be entertained. I want the audience to enjoy have a great time at this show. Anything I can do to make the audience experience better, that's what I wanted to do. Because in the end, that's why we're doing this. It's not about feeling good about our performance. I don't care if I felt that my crying scene was so emotional and I went to new places inside of my heart and my soul. Like, yeah, that stuff may have happened. But if it doesn't read to the audience and the audience doesn't care, I didn't do my job.
Right.
I became hyper-focused on the audience experience.
So did you find yourself gravitating more towards theater because of that?
Well, and that's sort of the thing, right? So theater is always going to be my first love. So this is my favorite acting story I ever had. I was doing a summer camp where us and a bunch of other students from college got together. We wrote a show, we made the costumes, we made the sets, and we traveled it all through Vancouver. It was a great opportunity. I loved doing it. And it was my first time I really wrote a show too. So in the show I played a troll. And I kidnapped a princess, and the whole reason why I kidnapped her is because I wanted her to be my friend. And so we're doing this scene for a specific camp. And the kids are watching us, and I come out, and the main character, she stops me, and I'm like, oh no, I've been defeated. And then she goes, why'd you do this? And I go, well, I just wanted the princess to be my friend. And then the moment that line comes out, this little blonde girl shoots up from the crowd, and she just screams, well, if you wanted to be her friend, why don't you try being nicer to her? Then all the other kids just erupted, like, yeah, be nice. And I just instantly go to the kids, like, yeah, being nice, that's what I'm supposed to do. They're like, yeah, be nice. And you could see all the counselors in the back just laughing and losing their mind because they realized how invested the kids were in this show.
That's adorable.
Yeah, that is my favorite acting story. And yeah, I loved it. It's going to be with me till the day I die. I know it picture for picture in my head. And so you can't get that with film. You can only get that with live performance. That being said, I've sort of transitioned out of theater because as much as I do love it and as much as I want to return to it someday, I'm definitely enjoying film much, much more. The imagination level on film with the creativity of the entire crew, and then I just show up and I act. I do the best I can, and you see the takes afterwards. Watching yourself on film it's an experience that's hard for me to describe because when you're doing it, it doesn't feel like anything, and then when you watch it, it's everything. And it's a great, great feeling. And so then I take that into well, what does other people think about it? And so I did something semi-recently that I normally never do, but I needed a bit of an ego boost. And so I was searching Arrow reviews on YouTube. And there was one guy who was doing one, and he was doing the episode I was in. And he specifically mentioned how funny he thought I was. And that meant a lot. That was a really nice feeling for me. I know it's really
great.
Yeah, it's kind of narcissistic to do that, but I needed to do it at the time.
It's also a little bit dangerous, I feel going down into the YouTube rabbit hole there, checking out comments and reviews and all that sort of thing can be a little bit dangerous on the psyche.
For sure. But I mean, I think all actors kind of need to know this, but you need thick skin because no matter how great you are as a performer, there's always going to be somebody who doesn't like what you do. And it's up to you to decide how important that person's opinion is. I know an actor in this city, actually. He's fantastic. I think he's amazing. One reviewer, for some reason, just hates him. And he doesn't know why. Nobody knows why. But out of 8 reviews, one of them will be bad just because this guy doesn't like him. And that's just how it is. And you just have to accept it. That you can't make everyone happy.
I feel like you shouldn't be trying to make everybody happy either.
Yeah. I think that's right too. Because it's, again, your focus on stage or in front of the camera. Your focus should be telling the story and being honest with your character. That's what your focuses should be. And that's where you get those good performances. That's where you get those people who enjoy what you do. But again, some people are going to be like, you can't control them, so don't even bother. Just do the best work you can.
So, were there any early steps that you were taking, whether it's in college or in high school, to curate your goal to get to the point where you can be at a high level in theater or on film?
Well, like I said before, as a kid, I was always interested in entertaining, and then from there, you do the shows that were going on in elementary school. Then high school, actually taking drama class in high school.
Were you part of any like extracurricular clubs or?
Well, one of the things you have to remember at the time when I was in high school, when we were in high school, is that Whose Line Was It Anyways was like starting to make it to TV. And I'm talking about like the old British version, not the Drew Carey one, like the old British one. And so that one kind of showed you how fun just kind of performing and just kind of being goofy was. And so with that, that sort of bred into like a bunch of our friends and stuff kind of doing improv games and everything. And I feel I took it a bit more seriously than other people did. I have some memories in particular at parties where I was very encouraging and I was very hyped up about people doing this stuff, and I was really encourage everything they were doing because I just kind of want to keep on doing it, and I want to keep on learning and just keep on going with it. So I was never really officially a part of any kind of like improv or theater focused thing outside of classes, but I always kind of dabbled in it. And again, like participating in Fringe stuff, like that's, you know, again, it's not like an official
right
thing.
It's a smaller stage.
Exactly. Yeah. But all those types of skills led up to eventually where I am now.
Right. And so from high school you go to college, and what is it that you do?
Yes.
What are you taking in college?
Okay, so my college journey is two parts. So at the end of high school, as I said earlier, accounting and acting were the two things. And I felt like I was kind of falling more into accounting just because my accounting teacher, she was very, Mark is good at this, Mark can do this. And my mom was very like, oh, here's something that's more stable, you can do this. But then I went to a one-act festival, and the part I played was very small. It was 3 different characters in a short play, and I just played them very differently. And just with 3 lines, I got the best supporting actor in the entire festival. And what came with that was the person who was our judge. His name was Doug, and he was in charge of the drama program at Keanu College back at Fort McMurray. And so when we got back from the One Act Festival, my director, she had an email saying like, hey, if Mark wants into this program, he doesn't need to audition. He can just show up and pay, and we'll take him. And so that's basically how I picked acting over accounting, because not only did I get this award saying like, yeah, I can do this, I had the instructor of the program being like, no, like we want Mark. If Mark wants in, we want
What a
him.
different world it would have been.
I can't even, I joke about it with a lot of my friends because in acting school, one of the professions we kind of tease, because acting is so far out there in the world that like the idea of sitting at a desk is so foreign to us. And I always kind of giggle to myself because I was like 2 seconds away from being an accountant. And I also joke too, like when I'm really kind of stressed out with acting and I'm talking to my actor friends, I'll just be like, you know what? If I went the other way, I probably would own 2 boats by now. Like I wouldn't even have to worry about anything. But it's definitely, I made the right choice. Like 100% I made the right choice. I'm a much happier person than I would be if I was an accountant. So I've been to 2 different acting programs in 2 different colleges. The very first one was Keanu College in Fort McMurray. And then the one I graduated from like 8 years ago was Studio 58 in Vancouver, Canada. Studio 58 is a big deal. It's considered one of the best, if not the best, acting school in Canada. There's only 2 other schools that kind of compete with it. And then Keanu College, as much as I loved it there, is on the lower scale of it. It doesn't have as much prestige as Studio 58 does. So the fact that I've seen so many similarities between the 2 kind of gives me a kind of wide barometer of what I think theater school is for everybody. So one thing is, if you're going to go into theater school, you have no time to yourself. You're basically at school 7 days a week. When I was at Studio 58, there was the student newspaper did an article on which classes are the most time consuming, or you spend the most time at school. And the only people who beat us was nurses. because we were at school 7 days a week. We had what we called the bunk house, which was a bunk bed in the props room where if you were tired, you can go and sleep. Because you would just be at school. Like you would wake up you wake up at 6 a.m., go to your first couple classes. You might have like a big break in the middle of the day for like lunch and to work on stuff, and then you're doing classes until night. And then after that's done, you're helping. You're part of crews, which help the main performance going on at the school. So you'd be like making props, making sets, making dresses, costumes. Those are the kind of things you'll be doing after classes. And so that can take you from 6 to like 9. 9 if you're lucky. So it's sort of, you're constantly at school and you're constantly working on stuff, and things can kind of become a blur, and you have to really learn to take care of yourself. And I noticed that with both of them. Less so with Keanu College, because Keanu College wasn't putting on as many performances with students as Studio 58 was. But you still had lots of homework, and you had lots of other things you had to work on in groups. And there's limited space, and so you kind of learn to adapt, and you kind of learn to appreciate putting a lot of work in and getting things figured out quickly, which I think is the idea.
I imagine that there's... because the theater and film scene is much larger in Vancouver than it is in Fort McMurray. So there would be some probably pretty wild differences in some of the ways that you're taught. Even though you said you saw some similarities between the two programs, I imagine that there's certain people who might come with a little bit more experience than others.
And actually that's like a really good way of putting it, because especially when it comes to the crews, when it was at Studio 58, they brought in a different director, a different set designer, a different lighting designer, a different costume designer, a different props. They brought in different everybody for every single show. So how one person directs is not going to be the same as the other. How one designer does it's not the same as the other. So you're learning a bunch of different styles of doing this work than just the standard, like Keanu College, which doesn't do that. Just like, this is how this person does it and this is how we're going to do it. But then you get a wide variety of like, these are the things you can do.
Right. I think that a large part of that is going to come down to demographic as well, right? Because we're talking about Fort McMurray. And, you know, your primary demographic of people up in that area are tradespeople. And that's not to say that tradespeople can't act or can't be actors or whatever, but it's going to be more community theater based, I think, because you're not seeing a whole lot of film crews roll up into Fort McMurray or be working in that area, right?
Yeah, no, you don't see a lot, but what's kind of funny about Fort McMurray is that you have like film directors and you have a lot of artistic people come out of Fort McMurray. Like Cody Brown is a good example. He's a friend of a friend, and he just, I think it was maybe a year before the global pandemic, he made his film. And I mean, like, when it came to taking classes at Keanu College, it wasn't all Fort McMurray kids. There was 3 of us, and everyone else came in from other places of Canada. So it's not strictly small town doesn't mean you can't be artistic. Small town doesn't mean you can't be creative. Small town doesn't mean you can't be successful in this field. It just means you might not be getting the full scope.
And I think that might be more what I was trying to get at. I wasn't trying to say that small towns are bad, but your talent and experience pool for, let's say, film might be severely diminished in a place where it's not an everyday thing.
Yeah, it's there's no community there. The community is very small, very tight knit. So yeah, it broadens your horizons to be in a bigger city that has more of a focus on acting, more focus on film, more of a focus on whatever you're looking for.
So after you finish Keanu's program, backpedaling just a little bit here, before you go to Studio 58, there's a small hiatus that happens in between there. So what prompts the big move?
Okay, my hiatus was awesome. I didn't stop acting. So I graduated from Keanu College, and I worked at a restaurant for a while, saved up money, and then I moved down to Edmonton. Edmonton has a much bigger acting scene, so I had a better chance of making stuff happen. While in Edmonton, though, the 2 things I pursued was improv. I was a part of an improv company there. I put on shows every Friday night. And then I did professional wrestling training while I was there. So my hiatus was pretty awesome.
No doubt.
So I never stopped acting. I also, again, had to participate in the Fringe show in Edmonton. And I mean, I think it's really good for actors to not completely surround yourself with actors all the time. You need people who have other hobbies, have other interests, because you need to kind of expand your own mind and kind of get a sense of who people are. If you're going to be playing people, you should meet and know different types of people. Just knowing actors only shows you one type of person. So I'm working different jobs in Edmonton. I'm doing different kind of performances. I'm still in the acting world, but my friend group contains people from engineers, mathematicians, computer engineers, athletes, like just very different types of people, not just actors. And I feel that kind of gives me, because I'm more of a character actor, so it gives me more of an understanding of how other people actually act and how other people kind of perceive things.
Keeps you grounded too a little bit, right? I mean, you get outside of your own little echo chamber.
100%, and it just humbles you so much, because you think you have this like golden key of how the world works and how people think, and then you say it to somebody who's just like, "That's the dumbest thing I ever heard." And you're like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I guess you're right." I remember when I dislocated my knee and I had to go see the doctor, and just describing to the doctor how my knee felt. I did it like an actor would, like someone in the theater community, because I talked about how my knee felt like a hollow tree, and he was just like, "I have no idea what the hell that means. Like, what are you talking about?"
Look, you see these tree trunks for legs? This one's hollow.
Yeah, this one has no wood inside of it. There's an owl living in this tree. But he was just like, yeah, he's like, "I don't know what that means." It's like, "All right, yeah, you're a doctor." So I did that, and then kind of everything kind of fell apart a little bit for me when I was in Edmonton, and I ended up going through a depression. Luckily for me, one of my really good friends in Edmonton was somebody I went to Keano College with named Scott Garland, and Scotty boy, me and him still have a really good friendship. And he saw that I was not doing too well. And so he calls me up and he's like, "Hey Mark, I have these auditions for these 3 schools in Canada. Come audition with me." And because I was in my state of mind, I was like, "No, Scott, what's the point? Like, why should I even bother?" And he goes, "Yeah, why should we do anything? What's the point of doing anything, Mark?" And then he hangs up the phone. And like right then and there, just getting that challenge from him, I was like, "Fine, I'm going to audition for these schools. I'm going to get into every single one."
Challenge accepted.
So he like reverse psychologied me. So I end up going out and doing these auditions, and studio is the one that bites back. And actually, here's a little tip for actors: if you want to get noticed, if you want to stand out, if you want a school to want to work with you, you have to show them you're not scared. And I think that's why my studio one worked out so well, because they give you a monologue to learn, then you learn it and you perform it the way you want. And then whoever's there who's doing the auditions with you, they start to direct you. And so I had Catherine Shaw for mine, lovely woman. We did the audition and she's like, "Oh yeah, that was nice. We're going to have you do it again. But this time your mom's really mad at you." And I was like, "Okay." And so I go in and I go kind of big right off the top. And she's like, "Oh yeah, she's madder. She's madder at you. She's screaming at you." And so I'm going like that. And then she starts throwing chairs at you. She's throwing plates at you. She's throwing stuff at you. And so as I'm delivering this monologue, I'm literally jumping and down, like pouncing. I'm like proning myself to the ground and rolling as I'm doing this monologue. I'm just doing whatever the hell she wants me to do. And I get through it and I'm sweating and I'm like, I hurt my knee and everything. Like I was just not like I was not like looking good. And she just smiled at me. She goes, "Thank you very much." And I left the room. And when I left, I got it. I got into that school. I just knew it. And then I get the email. I get the emails a couple weeks later. And to my ignorance, I didn't know anything about Studio 58 at the time.
Right.
I just did it because Scott challenged me. And so I'm doing a show with Scott at the time. And so we're all warming up for the show. We're all actors warming up. I was like, "Hey man, like, have you heard back from any of the schools yet?" And he's like, "No. Did you?" And I was like, "Yeah, Studio 58 emailed me. They want me." And then all the actors in the room like stopped and looked at me and all their jaws dropped. They're like, Studio 58 wants you? I was like, yeah. And they're like, that's a big deal, Mark. Like, that's one of the best schools in the country. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm moving to Vancouver. And that's sort of when the decision was made, was right there. And then, yeah, I think it was a day or two after your wedding, I moved to Vancouver.
Boom.
But I thought it was really funny because, like, it helped me that I actually didn't know much about the school going into it. Because I didn't have
the expectations.
Exactly. There was no pressure. I was just like, yeah, they want me to do this monologue. Okay, they're throwing chairs at me. Fine. I just did whatever they wanted, and then I left. And I think that's what's really helped me, because the more I care about something in an audition, the more likely I overhype it and mess myself up.
Right.
But the less I care, the better work I do. And so that's how my brain works. And so maybe that's how your brain works too. Maybe that's what you got to think about when you go to do something.
Don't chair throwing a daily occurrence?
No, but I did get a concussion at Studio 58.
Oh, no.
Yeah. We were playing this drum game, and I jumped and I overstepped, and I fell backwards. And actually, what saved my life was stage combat training at
Somebody threw a couch.
Stage combat training in Keanu College and pro wrestling. They both teach you to tuck your chin when you fall. That's to protect your head. So as I was falling backwards, I already had my chin tucked. And so then I hit the corner of a piano. And it just like split me open. I remember a buddy of mine, he ran back. He just checked my head. He's like, oh yeah, I see blood. And then my teacher who was there was like, oh my God, I killed Mark. Like, my teaching career's over. I killed him. But I just had like a really bad concussion. And it's funny, right? Like I did all this amateur wrestling in high school. I did pro wrestling for a couple years in Edmonton. No injuries. As soon as I go to theater school, I get 2.
Boom.
Like, theater school is tough, guys. Don't even get me started. It's a tough place to be.
Okay, so you get into a prestigious acting school. How does it go?
You know what? It went. I don't know if this is a me thing, but the very beginning of it was great. I really felt that so Studio 58's broken up into terms, which each year is 2 terms, and it's a 3-year program. So it actually goes by fairly quickly. And I would say for the first, at least definitely the first 2 terms, if not the first 3 terms, that's when I was really in my element. Definitely the first term. I dominated the first term. Because, and I think what helped me is that I had life experience going into the school. A lot of the people in my class were going straight from high school to Studio 58. Now, that doesn't mean they're bad actors or anything by that means. I am not going to say that. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is what helped me get really comfortable with studio so quickly was that I've already done a program. I've had all this life experience that I'm bringing into it that these kids didn't have. And I felt that really built my confidence, and I didn't care what any of them thought. I just went in being like, I was always the audition guy who had chairs thrown at me. Like I can commit, I can make this believable, and I can enjoy it. I remember one day in particular where it was around the end of our scene work, because you don't start doing scenes at the beginning of acting school. You start doing a lot of character work, animal work, mask work, like all these things that aren't a script, just building characters with your body and your voice. So we're at the end of our script work sessions, and normally we only had 2 teachers, Wendy and Allison, but then Catherine came down to watch us because it's around the end of the term. One of the people, so everyone in the group had the same script, and one of the groups was missing the person who I was playing, and so that group asked me to play that person. And I was like, absolutely, I'd love to. I did mine with my group, how we had planned, and then with the other group, I just did whatever with them. And when we sat down for notes with the teachers at the end of the class, all 3 of them agreed that I killed it that day, and that both of my performances were outstanding. So I knew that at that point in theater school that, like, yeah, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. I was feeling really good about myself. But then the problem with theater school happens. And I shouldn't say this is a problem with theater school. What I should say is this is the reality of the business. Once you get to a certain point, when you're outside of the classroom setting, and then it becomes about putting on shows for people, your role in your role in school changes. You're basically just doing what they think you should be doing from here on out for your career. So from doing like lead parts to being spear carriers, like that's kind of how it goes for some
bouncer.
The bouncer, your cop. I played everyone's dad because I was a fat dude with a beard, so I played everyone's dad. So, and I mean it's funny too though, because when I left studio, other fat dudes with beards who went to studio said the same thing to me. They were like, they would meet me and they'd be like, "Oh, you're Studio 58 grad?" I was like, "Yeah." Like, "You played everyone's dad, didn't you?" I was like, "Absolutely," because it's just like what you do. Because it's the reality of the industry is your look. Your look is the most important. Mm-hmm. So even though I could play Romeo, I don't look like a Romeo unless you're doing a really weird version of Romeo and Juliet. So,
were there ever scouts or like agents, casting directors that ever stopped in at shows? Like, was that a regular thing?
So, these shows you do it for your schools, and again, depends where you are. In a smaller city with not casting directors and stuff, you're not going to get this. But in your major cities, you're going to get this. Basically, like, all agents and casting directors are invited to everything. Will they show up? Most likely not, but some of them do. So, some people do get scouted. When it comes to me, I don't think I was scouted at school. But after school, they had this thing called the GVPTA. I think it's a Greater Vancouver Performance something. But basically, when you're fresh out of school, you audition for this. And if you have two judges, and if they both like you, you get to do your audition in front of casting directors, artistic directors, talent agents, all throughout the city. And it's this big thing. So when I did that, when I walked out of that, I had a lot of phone calls and I had a lot of emails. From a lot of mainly from artistic directors for theater companies. They wanted to see me more than anybody else. Mm-hmm. Which was great. It was a great feeling. Yep. So I recommend that for anybody. And one thing you can do too when you're done performing, or maybe talk to your school about this before you do this. Reach out to casting directors. Reach out to agencies that you want to represent you, and see if they'll come see your show. Be like, "Hey, I'm about to graduate. I'm playing Othello in Othello. Come check it out."
Take the initiative.
Yeah, exactly, right? And they're going to appreciate that because, and I mean, the thing is, they're not always going to come out and see you. Like, you don't get your hopes up that they're all going to show up all the time. But if there's someone very specific that you want to work for, if there's an artistic director in a city that you want to work for, invite them to your performance. The worst they can do is say, "No, I'm busy." The best thing they can do is they can come see it and they can come love you. So you really have nothing to lose by doing this. Yeah. And they'll appreciate you asking them to come see you.
Best foot forward, right?
Exactly, right? And again, like you said before, initiative. You show that initiative, you show that bravery, more likely they're gonna want to see you.
Okay, so you do your final shows at Studio 58, you graduate from the program. What happens post-graduation? Does the real world, kick you down a little bit?
Good old real world. I was pretty fortunate because for my summer jobs in between school, because you're not really allowed to work while you're at theater schools because it's like so time consuming. So it's very rarely people get jobs while in theater school. So during the summers, I ended up doing background work, and that's where I worked for Supernatural. I worked for Cult, just doing background stuff. And so I got a background agent. So he told me that after I graduate, he'll move me up to performance level. So I had an agent right out the gate. I do not recommend this.
Why?
I was not prepared. I was coming from a theater school, and theater acting and film acting are very different. And so a lot of the subtle differences between theater and film, I didn't understand. There were obvious ones I understood for sure, but a lot more of the stuff that would have made my auditions better, I didn't know. So I did not do good in that, and because of that, I ended up losing that agent because he's like, I can't get anyone to see you. That doesn't mean I didn't have any good auditions. I had lots of callbacks, but just I couldn't book anything, so he dropped me. But while doing all that stuff, I was still doing theater. all over the city. There was a period of time actually where I was cast in 4 shows at the same time. That was nerve-wracking. But yeah, so like it wasn't like I wasn't acting. I was doing a lot of theater. I was doing tons of theater. I just couldn't book any film stuff. When my agent dropped me, that was a really bad summer for me because this theater company I was a part of for a long time, they did me really dirty. And I didn't like how they treated me. I felt really disrespected. And then at the same time, my agent drops me. And so I was like, to hell with this. And I actually stopped acting for, I think, 2 years or like a year and a half. Because I was so fed up with the non-acting parts of acting.
Sure. Like the backroom stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Like a lot of the quote unquote politicking and a lot of the, like, I'm not very good at smoothing or something they call it, where you just schmoozing. Yeah, I'm not good at it. I can't even say the word. That's how bad I am at it. I can't even pronounce it.
Brown nosing.
I can't brown nose. I can to a point, but if you ask me, and this is my philosophy on life, if you ask me for my honest opinion on something, I will give you my honest opinion. It doesn't mean I'm going to sit there and be mean to you. But I will say, like, you know what, I really enjoyed this, I really enjoyed that, but this part didn't work for me. But I mean, that could just be me. It's not a big deal. Like, I'll say something like that. But that's enough for someone to think I'm an asshole. So that's my problem. That's my own thing, because I value honesty. And I think honesty makes acting better. I think a true friend will tell you the things you need to work on. And so that's what I kind of took in with everybody. If they asked me to help them with their project, I would help them with their project because I want you to do the best I think you can do. It has nothing to do with your ego. It has to do with you asked for my help and this is what I'm trying to do.
You asked for my opinion and I'm going to give it to you.
Exactly. And there's no malice behind it. There's only love behind me doing this because I just want you to be the best. So like that would get me into hot water with people who were overly sensitive.
Sure.
So I was sort of at the end of my rope and I was like, I'm taking time off. And so that was actually the best move I ever did, was to take like just a step back. I started working downtown for an internet marketing company. I was making really good money and I started taking up Wing Chun at that point. So I was learning Kung Fu, which is something I always wanted to do. I was working out regularly again because when you're on the road all the time doing all this theater stuff, it's really hard to be healthy sometimes. Or at least, I shouldn't say it like that. For me, it was really hard to stay healthy. I'm sure other people can do it just fine. But for me, it was too much temptation to not be healthy. So I was getting my health back together. I was feeling really good about myself. But there was something just missing. I just wasn't fulfilled. I just wasn't happy. Mm-hmm. And so a friend of mine, dear friend of mine named Masai, she mentioned to me this film teacher she had. And I was like, okay. So I went and I met him, and I thought I was just going to sit in on his class, because you can audit classes and stuff, where you basically just sit there for free and listen. You don't get to really participate. So I audited one of his classes. But he was like, what do you mean? Like, you're coming to my class, you're going to act. And so he gave me a script, and I was like, okay. And that was my first time acting in like 2 years. And it was one of the best things I did on camera
at the time for you.
Yeah, like I just did it again, and it all came back, and I just felt it again. I was like, yeah, this is what I was missing. And so he gave me a ride home after that, and he's like, listen, I know lots of guys who look like you who aren't as talented as you. You just need some refinement. So like, if you come to my class, this is what we'll work on. And that's what I did. And through him, I built my film confidence up to a point now where I'm not as confident as I am with theater, but I'm definitely at this point where I feel really good about my film stuff.
Right. And so you suddenly make the jump from being in the background of Supernatural to having a speaking role on Arrow.
four lines on Arrow. Like that's a huge first big day. So yeah, it was really good. It was definitely the right decision to make. And yeah, I think that's why I'm sort of more focused on film right now, because it's a lot of it's just me just working on myself. And I think the next time I go back in front of a live crowd, I think it's going to be something like stand-up or like a one-person show. Mm-hmm. Just something where it's just me and I'm just here to entertain you and I'm going to leave. That's all this is going to be. And I hope you enjoy it.
Let's backtrack a little bit to this guy's class. What is it? Sure. What is it that he says that gets that gets you rolling again?
So I think what it was is that he is from a small town in Saskatchewan. Us being from a smaller town in northern Alberta, and him being from a small town in Saskatchewan, our mentalities are really similar. So he knew how to talk to me, and I never felt like it's probably at that point in time in my life was probably the most like welcomed I ever felt in a performance place. It felt very comfortable. He was very honest with me, and again, like it goes back to that honesty. Like if I did a take and I thought it was good, he'd be like, "No, that was bad." We'd talk about it, and then I'd try something else. I'd try something he suggested, because you should always try, always say yes to a suggestion to see if it works. And I would try it, and then I would watch it again, and I'd be like, "I hate you, David, because you're right."
Right.
Like
he gave you that honest feedback that you needed.
Exactly. I didn't want someone blowing smoke up my ass. I wanted someone to tell me, like, that was really bad. Try it like this. And then sometimes he would give me a piece, and I'd go up and I'd do it, and I'd ace it the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd be like, "Yeah, I have nothing to say. That was perfect." And it's like, great. So it was really good. It was really good classes, and it's hard to find somebody who took his classes who don't love him in the way he teaches. So it's hard to explain, because it's really laid back, and it's just about the art of it. It's not about yourself. It's about the performance. And it's so nice. It's such a nice feeling. Yeah, I don't know how else to put it. It's really special. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So once you get up in front of the casting directors for these film shoots, what's that like? What's it like to stand in front of a casting director knowing that if you get this part, you're going to be on TV?
One thing people have to know about casting directors is that they're people too. They're trying to do their job the best that they can do it, and you have to do the same, and that's what they'll appreciate. There's some casting directors, though, whose personalities don't really mash well with other people, and that's fine, though, because they still do a great job. So I have nothing but nice things to say about casting directors. Even the ones who don't like me, I have nothing but nice words for you, because what you do, you're good at doing it, and that's why you're doing it. You know, like, you're tapped into something for somebody that works. And so I would never tell a casting director to change how they do their stuff. That being said, the process of being cast is what screws a lot of people up.
How so?
I'll start with commercials. A lot of people, a lot of actors don't like commercial auditions, mainly because they're what we call cattle calls, where you show up and there's hundreds of other people there, and they bring you in 4 or 5 at a time. 1 or 2 of you will get to say a line, and the rest of you just stand there and look pretty. That's all you do. It feels really degrading, and it's not fun, and it wastes like half your day. So I haven't met a lot of actors who like those types of auditions, and it just kind of stresses you out, and it makes you feel like there's nothing you can do to book this part. Mm-hmm. Like with me in particular, like they'll give you sides for a line, and I'll learn the line, but I'll never get to say it in the room, because when I get in there with the 4 other people who they're trying to group us all together to see if we look like good, like we're friends, they're not going to give the line to me. They're going to give the line to the guy with abs or the beautiful girl. Like, that's tend to what they go to, because that's the part of the marketing. I don't think it's wrong. I just don't enjoy those auditions so much. But at the same time, the amount of people in the room still is intimidating. Now, outside of commercials, this is a problem that both TV, film, and the commercial have. Like, all of them have this issue, where you'll show up, and there's just 25 people in a small room, and you just sit there quietly. And your call time can be 1:15. You'll get there at 12:45 or whenever, and you'll sit there till 3 o'clock. And then you'll go in, give 2 lines, and then you get out. And that's sort of the part that's intimidating, because you'll sit there quietly and you'll look around the room and you'll see everybody else going for the part. And you'll just slowly kind of pick apart like, for me, I should say, I would slowly pick apart myself as I'm looking at all the other people. where I'm like, oh, that guy looks so good for this part. This guy looks so good for that part. But what's also funny about that is that not everybody in that room is going for the same part. So you might psych yourself out thinking that this gal has it, but she's not even on the same show for you, like, as you are. So you gotta really just stick to yourself. Just think about what you're gonna do, and not focus on other people.
Right. So casting directors can be casting for multiple shows or even multiple episodes at the same time.
In one day, they'll be casting, what was it? I want to say it was like 20 different parts for like one show.
Wow.
It all depends, right? Sometimes it might just be like a quick afternoon for them and they're just casting like 5 parts. But sometimes it's like, yeah, we're doing all the one-liners today. And that's going to be like a long day for them. A quick story. Just this last audition I had that I booked before the global pandemic. It was for a kebab man for a TV show. And so what I do is when I get these auditions, I read the description of the character and then I read the script. And then I look at myself in the mirror and I try to figure out, why the hell am I auditioning for a kebab man? So I'm looking at myself and I'm kind of trying to figure out, like, why me? And I was like, well, I'm fat and I'm hairy. So let's just be a really gross kebab man. Like, that was my strategy.
Gross.
Yeah, well, it's just like, I'm just trying to think, like, based on like what they're kind of trying to do here with it, and like the title, the description of the character. So it's like, I'm just gonna go gross because it's like, it's gonna be different and it's gonna be fun. So that's what I'm gonna do. I get into the audition room. I open the door. 20 other people. All of them are dressed like chefs. I'm the only one who's not. And I was like, well, like, this is what I brought, and so this is what I'm gonna do.
What did you bring?
I walked in just wearing like a normal button-up shirt, but when I got into the room, so they put me on deck. So like, mark, you're next. They bring in somebody else. I was like, okay. I stood up and I took off my button shirt and I had like a wife beater on. I had fake gold chains.
Oh,
I just walked up to the spot, and I remember like one guy in particular, he looked at me and he got the biggest smile on his face because he was like, yes, like, this guy gets it. So I walk in, I get ready, and then they bring me in and they look at me and they're like, oh god. And so and this is where like improv works, because it was a no line part. They didn't have a line for it. It was just some guy in the background, really. And they're like, yeah, just talk about your kebab and just like talk about its spices or whatever, and we'll cut you off. And I was like, okay, great. And before that point, like, all the auditions were like really quick, because like, and you kind of hear them guy be like, oh, hey, come buy my kebab or whatever. And so I get in there, I'm like, oh, hey, I got the best kebab in the entire city. You'll never get this. I got these spices that even your mom would love, you know. I'll tell you what the secret is, but you got to buy a couple, you know what I'm saying? And I just keep going like that and that and that. And I would pause, waiting for them to call cut, and they would never call cut. So then I just keep going. I just keep going and going and going. I end up doing an audition for like 3 or 4 minutes of me just like improving all this, like, yo, lady, I see you walking your dog over there. Your dog looks mighty hungry for kebab. You know, your dog wants a kebab. And I just go on and on and on. And then, like, eventually I just stop and I look at them like, what the fuck? That's when they're like, cut. And they cut it. And the 2 girls just burst out laughing. They just, like, they thought it was the funniest thing they ever seen. And I start laughing with them. And they're like, the one woman, she's like, I don't think I can send that. And I was like, okay, well, like, I can do it again. Like, what do you want me to do? I'll do whatever you want. And then she smiles at me and she goes like, you know what? No, I'm going to send that one. That's a great take. I'm going to send it. And I was like, great. I walked out of the room. Went home. Next day, I got a phone call. Be like, yeah, they want you.
Walked past all those chefs.
Walked past all those Chef Boyardees. Because like you just know sometimes when you're acting. You just know when you're on point. And so it's a good feeling when you walk out of the casting room and you're like, yeah. Like, one thing that actors need to take with them when they go into audition, it's not about booking the part, because there's so much stuff in your way that prevents you from booking it. What it is your performance. Are you happy with what you did? Did you entertain them? That stuff is more important than, oh, I think I got it. For example, during this time now, you're filming a lot of auditions and emailing them out to the casting. I am very happy with every performance I've sent out. I've sent out a lot, and I haven't booked a thing. But I'm happy with everything I'm doing, and the same casting directors are seeing me again and again and again.
Just a matter of time.
And that's it. Like, I'm doing a good job. That is a good job. because they want to see me, they want to cast me, they're giving me this opportunity. So I know I'm doing good in my heart. It's just I could be losing the part because, oh, he's too tall. I'm losing the part because, oh, no, we're not really thinking a bald guy. I could be losing the part because I already promised the part to the producer's cousin down in the States.
Right.
Like, there's so many reasons why somebody won't get a part that has nothing to do with their talent. So actors need to remember that it's not about booking the role. There's so much other stuff around it. So just go in, do a job that you're proud of, and be entertaining. And that's all you need to do. That's it. That's the secret to casting.
That's some good advice there at the end.
For me, that's the secret of casting.
Yeah. Any final thoughts?
I mean, I know I talked about myself a lot and I got into tangents because that's what I do. But I just think it's really important to kind of just express the passion that I have for this. Because I know for me, I'm at this point where I'm about to hit the next level. Like, I'm really close to hitting the next level. And I'm trying to keep humble. I'm trying to enjoy myself and just be passionate and just be creative and just have fun. Because that stuff's really important when it comes to this field. It's really important. So I just want you guys all to know that no matter where you are in your journey in this kind of career, there are going to be ups and downs. And so it's just all about expressing yourself and enjoying where you are and enjoying the moment. That's really important to remember when you're trying to get out there and you're trying to make something in this crazy, wacky, artistic business.
All right, well, that's going to do it for Frames for Thought for today. I'd like to thank Mark for sharing his journey about going from student to rookie to pro and breaking into the acting industry. Hopefully you enjoyed the show. And until next time, we'll see you later.
Bye.
The Frames for Thought podcast uses royalty-free music from Track Tribe and from RKDC. Thanks for listening.